How's it? Great lesson this week. I felt like I threw way too much information and it kind of got fuddled. So what I really wanted to do is just give some core concepts, and hopefully this will help you in this week's journey to highlight why I think that the mode Mixolydian is important, and the construct was how it would be different from the Ionian and Lydian. What we basically you came to the determination of the same thing I did, is Lydian isn't really an overused thing. You hardly ever hear it. When you do hear it, it's very case specific. And what I'd like to say is that half step, that meat and potatoes of that raised fourth, to me is just turning it into a lending tone, because it basically sets itself up to be a part of another major triad. The reason why is when you're using sevenths like that, and in Mixolydian you don't have that lending tone, that dominant seventh now becomes some sort of a dominant triad. That lines you up to use other notes and do movements that you necessarily wouldn't have done. Same way Dorian does. It feels minory, but that six really gives it a different movement where you could just jump somewhere else in your phrasings or your note couplings or your jumping outside the box kind of feel. So long story short, I want to go over the different types of Mixolydian movements, the Mixolydian scales, and just say some stuff which might ding some bells. Mixolydian mode is the fifth mode. If you're going to be doing the fifth mode, you might recognize that it is a dominant pattern because it has the 1, 3, 5, and then the flat 7. With that flat 7, it's comparative to a dominant seventh chord because the chords use the 1, 3, 5, and 7. So with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the flat 7, what you think is that, but what you're actually hearing is the major chord structure with that seventh. And I know it seems obvious, but if you take away the tonic and you play just the 3, 5, and the 3, 5, and the 7, you can add whatever variation to supply yourself with something other than that one tone, which is why I talked about the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th as adding tones. Easiest way to get there is to be able to hear that. So in C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, Mixolydian, if I was going to add a secondary tone, a sus, I could either add the D on top of there and keep that D there moving. So if we're in C and I'm playing a C sus, I would have a C, I would have a E, I would have that D. And then I could also throw other things in there if I wanted to complete that chord a little bit more. If I want to make it awkward, I could do something stupid, which is not in the chord structure, or I could have that being like a movement. And if other notes and other movements within their support, that could be a part of the melody. It might not be necessarily within that chord structure, but that's what I'm trying to say to you. Music is just relative to what you're playing and what else is going on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. In Mixolydian, if you're doing your scale exercises with the down up alternating, you could have note couplings of 3, then 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was the wrong note. See? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Something along those lines. And being able to incorporate that half step, that part of the Mixolydian in your scale exercises, is where those couplings of notes later on will be regurgitated as fast movements with muscle memory, rather than going, oh, I need to choose this note. It will naturally fall into place because your ear would have training from 1, 5, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 6, 1, flat 7, 1, 6, 1, flat 7, 1, flat 7, 1, 6, 1, 5, flat 7, 6. Those start to become like second nature. Even in Lydian, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So while you're learning the fretboard and what notes are where, you could go, oh, D flat, and like hit that. But to actually know that D flat and D flat here is relative to the D flat here and D flat here, you have to first know where A is to know that's not an A, to hear that. So what I would recommend is whatever chords you're going to be playing, play them wrong and right. So I know it sounds weird, but A7, beautiful. A7 played in the wrong place, not so bad, but A7 played in the wrong, a little bit weird. That has a minor influence. So if you hit that, that's going to be tending to be going towards something else. So knowing that you're a half step off from all these things and knowing your modal structures, knowing what those half steps are, is where the bee's knees is, the meat and potatoes. What we're getting into is, I think you're starting to see that, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed with this. So what I want you to do is just Mixolydian scale reviews. A Mixolydian scale review is taking that chord and saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. moving it up to a C sharp and knowing C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and then going to B rather than B sharp. That B is your 7th, and knowing that intrinsically in C sharp that you're not going to be playing a B sharp, you're going to be playing a B, because in C sharp, that's the only thing that really has that B sharp, which is really there, blaringly loud, doesn't feel right to say. When you know that in your brain, the neurons connect, and then when you put it together as scale exercises and pull that out while playing, you might be in something in the key of C, jazz, doing a pentatonic movement, hear a Lydian note, do that, and then move up a half step to C sharp. If you're doing Lydian and you know that Lydian is a major chord, major influence, Mixolydian is as well. If you flatten that 7th and do Lydian up and Mixolydian down in C sharp and then go back into C, that movement sounds amazingly crazy, like having... just very Ionian. Then go up a half step. Those are just up a Lydian, down a mix. I had diatonic movements. If there weren't so many catchy notes in there, I would have like a C. I would move it up to the C sharp and have the possibility of doing a Phrygian there. But if I keep away from the Phrygian and don't bring it into a minor feeling, I could keep that in C, go to C sharp and have a C. Up Lydian. And then down a Mixolydian. Back into C. Oh, actually, I should scoot over so you can see my fucking fingers. So I would have like a... back into the original key. Another good way to look at it is go through all these. So if you're in F and you're seeing your F Mixolydian, knowing that you're not going to be playing your E back into the F, you're going to be playing a E flat, all right? Cool. Go through all the notes, all the scales, just play them out once. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and make a mental note that's not a G sharp, it's the G there. So basically it takes away one of your sharps from the A. Go through all those. Then it comes into what are your relative keys. In Mixolydian, you have a Mixolydian and major influence. So in the key of C, you have C Mixolydian, right? C Mixolydian is closely resembled to the F major. Because that is the actual the movement for F. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 is very closely related to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. C sharp Mixolydian, F sharp major, D Mixolydian, G major, D sharp Mixolydian, G sharp major, E Mixolydian, A major, F Mixolydian. F Mixolydian is A sharp major. So F mix would have a feeling of and then we go to A sharp. Very close. There's only one note variation and it still sticks within there. So if you go down the list and you see how it correlates, C to F minor, C mix to F major. When you get all the way down to B Mixolydian, it makes sense that it looks like an E major, and those two are relative to each other. There are also relative keys for Mixolydian to minor, but there's a slight switch in there. Some of the same notes can be found in both the minor and the Mixolydian scales, which make these closely resembled. When you're building your triads, the notes that you see when you build those triads and physically see it, where I was circling those and which ones connect to each other and how to play them together. If you know that a natural minor scale is relative to the Mixolydian scale, it starts on the 7th note. So one example would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That feels like it's going to be going all the way from do, 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 but it doesn't hit that same natural feeling because it's in the minor. Do, 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 do. So that natural minor is actually the Mixolydian movement. You can see that through C Mixolydian is almost the D minor. The C sharp is the D sharp minor. If you go all the way through it randomly, we'll just pick like the F Mixolydian. Look at F Mixolydian. It should closely resemble a G minor because those notes that are within there, the makeup, are very closely related to G natural minor. Okay? So if you go through there, see how the notes are somewhat the same. If you want, there's something called a blues scale or a micro blues scale in Mixolydian. That's taking the influence of that and playing one additional note in between that. So in the key of C, you would have C, D, E flat, E, sorry, C, D, E flat, E, F, G flat, G, A, B flat, and C. So what you're trying to feel is those two little added extra notes have increments in between there when played as quarter notes. And if you're working on your couplings, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, if you do one of those with a micro blues scale, the influence on it gives a lot more notes and a lot more feeling because it's adding those diatonic chromatic movements through your scaling. Done slow, you'd have like a... Oh, that had the seventh, sorry. Something along those lines. But you could see that the E flat in there and the G flat are the micro blues. Those tones are just the microtones into the actual note that you're supposed to be on. Next thing I would say to go through would be the interval forms. Realize that through that, the minor, you've got a 1, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, 6, flat 7, and then your resolution. That's the microtones. The tones in there are 2 tones, 1 tone, 1 tone, 1 tone, 1 tone, 1 tone, 2 tone, 1 tone, 2 tone. And that gets you all through. Or I could say the formula would be whole step, half step, half step, half step, half step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. I know it's a mouthful, but when you go slow down and break it down, those little E flat and G flat movements in there are also the bee's knees, because as you know in jazz, that's where that kind of comes from, microtones. Next thing after microtones is the dominant bebop. Dominant and bebop is basically the same thing that you have as a Mixolydian bebop, but there are 3 other major and minor and Dorian bebops movements that you could do. So Mixolydian bebop is one of them. The other 3 is Dorian bebop. The other one is a major bebop and a minor bebop. So honestly, you'd have an Ionian bebop and an Aeolian bebop. And we'll get into Aeolian in our next session. The interval for bebop dominant is going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 7. The passing note between the 7th and the root is the same as the Mixolydian. So the thing is, you're just adding the one extra note, which is your lending tone. So the bebop scale in C would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, B, C. Feel me now. Down, up, 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 down. Try and get through. Boom, boom, Mixolydian bebop. If you think about it and you can figure out what Mixolydian Dorian is just from the Dorian mode, you got it covered. What is that weirdness of Dorian? Got that 6, right? So just add all 4 notes at the end of the Dorian. That's the Dorian bebop. Same thing with major, same thing with minor. We'll talk about that later with the minor because it changes, because natural minor and melodic minor, and they all go up and down different ways. All right, so the dominant scale review, go through all scales. When you just went through C, you saw you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, seem all the same until you get the 6th scale degree and go. So if you're in, let's say, D, you'd have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B flat, no, B, and then you'd have B, C, C sharp, D, C sharp, and then back down through your fingers. That in combination with some pentatonics, dun, dun. That would be a bebop mixolydian in D with just a pentatonic in D, pentatonic D. Cool. Go through all those scale degrees, just see where those are. The formula for that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 7 resolution, or whole, half, whole, half, half, or two tones, one tone, two tone, one tone, one tone, one tone. Examples of mixolydian tunes that you and I would know if you want to just Google on there. I Feel Fine is in G mixolydian. It's a great example. She Said in A mix. That's great. All Right Now, what is that? That she stood in my bed. All right now has that. It doesn't have the lending tone in the whole tune. Check it out. Seven Bridges Road, L.A. Woman, Dark Star, as we were talking about, Norwegian Wood, especially in the outro. Ramblin' Man, one of my favorite examples of it. Sweet Child of Mine. Look at it. See it. Mixolydian. The reason why I'm pointing out the mixolydian and correlation of the Lydian and the Ionian is be familiar with all the three major phrasings. So when we go into the minor phrasings of the second, third, and sixth in those roots, you would be able to see in a major chord the minor influence is different from the major. I know you do. It's intrinsically. I watch your fingers when you're noodling. You've got it in you. Also, once you get through the mixolydian thing, remember you can augment any of these modes. The modal structures are just outlines for you. They have names and associations because people need to be able to express them. The next tone, I would just call a mixolydian flat 6. Let's say we're in C. Flatten your 6. It completely changes the mixolydian feel from the flat 7 by having a flat 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Do, 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 do. So you got the major influence of the third. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you just play those three in the mixolydian, you could actually say you're playing in a different modal structure, but if you're playing in the key of G and you play that 6th note, it's just a flattened 6. It's called the mixolydian flat 6, and it's worked because it is the same tonal structure that you get from a harmonic minor when started on the 6th note of the harmonic minor. Okay? And we'll get a little bit into that as we recap next week. But here's the thing. Throwing too much information, I don't want to give you brain rot. And the idea is all these things are playing over 3-chord songs, 4-chord songs, 5-chord songs. At a certain point, you'll notice that the rock gods that do this, they do their own thing. Whether it's Satriani, Stevie Vai, Eric Clapton, Stevie Vai, I might have just said that, Eric Johnson, who else? Russo, any of the guys from any of the brand new jam bands that are out, or dear God, they're modal heavy. I mean, too much to the point. I think I'm too modal heavy, and I would like to get back to just playing 3-chord bullshit. But tell you what, having all these tools in your tool bag and being able to pull them out for the right job is essential. And I do believe that after we go through just these 7 modes and we start getting into more contextual arrangement and music theory on how to actually write music out, it will make more sense on why you want to have these tones be foundations and all the accents or passing notes, like the melodies that you're going to create, are just regurgitations of these structures. No matter where we put the chord structures, as long as you've got a basic chord structure that follows any form of music pattern, your ear will be trained from these lessons. Your fingers will be in the right positioning, which means none of these lessons really go away. Continue with the spider patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next time, do 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. doing those over and over again and doing 3, 4, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, in and of itself will get you faster doing alternate picking. It'll get more finger placement for the fretboard, knowing where you are. And those little structures, you're going to find yourself in sort of jam somewhere, doing something. Notice that part of that is that bebop. These 4 notes that go up is a great finger scale. And if you're able to do your spider exercises by doing 4, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 2. No matter where you put your notes, if you know what you're doing, you can combine those with the melodic scales, the melodic minor, the pentatonic scales, and come up with something super awesome and original, just like these great guitarists do. As you know, and I told you, I just got an electric. I haven't even dabbled into the electric sound. I'm looking forward to going back through stuff like, Green Day, I guess, and maybe more stuff from my age group, like Boston, Chicago, Journey, shit like that, and seeing what actually they were doing modally, which will create more of an ambiance of what I'll be looking for in my own music. The takeaways from this is, when you're playing in Mixolydian, I would like you to look for your sus4s or your sharp 11s. So if you're doing a natural mix of notes like your 13th and your 3rd, in your major chord, your 3rd, it just is what it is. It's not going to move. So when you're noodling and playing, remember your half-step constants in your Mixolydian, your Lydian, and your Ionian vary. The only one that varies really in that is the phrase 4th, and that has nothing to do with the half step that comes between the 3 and the whole step that comes between the 3 and the 2. Still major. So I guess break down almost all these. Don't spend a lot of time on it and break your brain on it, but I'm sure the breakthrough that you're coming through in Mixolydian is being able to have the tool of using that flat 7th. Know that the meat and potatoes is going to center around that, and that if you try alternate things over major chords like a G Mixolydian with a flat 6 rather than having your standard 6 in there, you can play a whole arrangement in a different movement of scales. That in combination with the Mixolydian bebop, Mixolydian microtone scale, what you're seeing is if you're playing in G Mixolydian, you could play a C major chord over the top of it. You then have your option in that C major chord to influence a Lydian movement or to influence the rest of the Mixolydian like you had been doing in the G Mixolydian, or you can choose to completely move that by changing the bass tone and then modulating. And then once you modulate, say we're in G Mixolydian and we're doing a C major chord and we end up throwing in a flat 6, like say we're playing a C mix instead of in the major, because it's still a major movement. So we've got G Mixolydian into a C major, still over G, but you're playing a C major chord. Instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, try a flat 6, and then move that with a bebop run, do 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 do, and see how those diatonic structures just completely flow when your fingers are all lined up on the right fretting from doing those spider exercises. And remember that you could also choose those relative major and minor keys. A good way to do that is just note association by physically going through each note and going, okay, the B sharp isn't there, it's a B. That's what makes it in G. Going to F and doing it and seeing where your sharps and your flats and everything are relative to. I got to tell you that you're doing a wonderful job, and I know it might seem overwhelming, but I love getting the text from you talking about your breakthroughs, and I love the fact that you take this information and you make it your own. That's the exact thing you should be doing. I've got students that sit down there like, I can't just do this and I don't get this, and honestly, if you don't get it, it will come back in another lesson. All these things tie together. I will never know enough about music, and I learn something each time I play, each time I teach somebody, each time I have a conversation. So thank you very much for being a student. Thank you very much. And when you are at a period where you feel like you've got a fine grasp on this, start teaching. I would love to see personally myself opening up a workshop and a workspace, and in the future just having people in there that want to be a part of music. And I appreciate you, and keep going with this. Next week's or so we're going to be working on Aeolian, and Aeolian is amazing. It's a whole nother doorway to a whole nother dimension. I'm going to be writing out lessons a little bit more in advance, more than 2 or 3 days in advance, and I'm starting now actually on the what I know collectively for aeolian, and I'm going to be trying putting it in 2 complete packed lessons, and then I will take pictures of those boards and send them to you so you can relate to that as well. Anyway, I really enjoyed seeing you this week. I really enjoyed the music and all the information that you've been sending my way too. Keep with it. You're doing a great job. Aloha.